Is the 1927 South Bend lathe that you've seen us take off the truck a while back. And this is the state it's in right now. And I'm going to take you around it and show you some of the improvements we made. And let me keep the cameras kind of steady. And what it looks like now. This is, you can see a lot of improvements over here. And one of the bigger improvements was I went to 220 voltage for my garage because I don't have three-phase in here. So I put a new motor on it and a new switch. So how this works is you have the 220 motor is turning a gear-driven chain, and I don't know if you can see it in there, but there is a chain inside here. But anyways, that's the chain. That drives the drive pulley. So this motor turns the chain, which turns the drive pulley. And then we come around here, from the other side, so you can get a better look at this end. And you can see it's cleaned up pretty nicely. Of course, it's not brand new. It's 1927. There are some imperfections in some of the ways where previous damage has been done, which cannot be repaired. And I'll show you that right here. It's right in here. This is where somebody probably dropped the chuck when they were taking it off, and it actually hit right here. And this is where all the work is done in this area. A lot of work is done here, so it wears the most. And I'm going to move this out of the way. You can see farther down, though, you'll see that the ways are pretty good shape. They're not nice and shiny like new, but they work very well. So let's go back over here. Once again, there is the drive pulley and then the belt. And we had somebody mention how this goes together. And this little pin right here, this little blue pin right there, if I can focus in on it. Anyways, this pulls out. And this is laced. I bought this from a supplier. And they put the lace together. The 53 is the length I needed. I measured that from around here. And that I can move this pulley or this belt from pulley to pulley from the drive to the driven. It matches up, keeps the ratio. It changes the ratio, but keeps the belt length the same. But all it does is just slides in there. It holds it in place just from tension. And that's what I do right here. This is the tension for that. And if you watch, you should see it move. See it move up and put tension on the belt. And it'll self-centering. These have a high in the center, which makes the belt run in the center. All right, so we go down here to the end, and this is where you change for threading the gear ratios. I cleaned all this up, and you can see that it's got the numbers on it that set what size threads, what you need for different gear ratios to make that right. And so you change these gears in here. And this is the reverse and forward for the feed on the bottom. And if you do that, this is what feeds this feed screw right here. So you can reverse it or go forward right here, up or down. And then you come over here. This is the working area. This is where this is the chuck, and this is where you put a piece of metal in here where you want to cut it. And then we have the saddle and the cross feed, and you can see how nice and easy this turns. And these little brass things on the end have felt underneath them. And I was looking for felt, and I had to borrow some from the craft department of this household. Anyways, I cut two pieces of felt, put underneath there, and what that does is it scrapes the metal filings off of the ways to keep them from getting underneath here and tearing stuff up. Then you have the cross feed, and I got this in partial gear here. And then my new tool holder, and I also have a new chuck for drilling holes in it in the tailstock. So I'm going to put a piece of metal in here, and I forgot to talk about this too. I also replaced because I went to a 220 motor, I had to change the control switch right here, and so you could control the whole operation right here. So forward, off, and reverse. Well, I didn't like the idea of reaching across a turning piece of equipment like this and reaching up here to like in an emergency and go from forward and possibly push it into reverse. So what I did is I installed an emergency shut-off switch down here, with an on-off switch. And so, let me see. Put the tension on the belt, and all you do is you push the on. Oops, I didn't put it in gear. There, now it's in forward. And so you push the button and it runs. And then if I need to stop it, right there. Okay. So in order to reverse the motor, now I can reverse it here, and I can reverse the feed for the screw over here. One other thing I had to work on was the back gears, which is this handle over here. And what you do is you pull this in and it locks in place. There's this little lever right here. You move this down, and then you put it in the back gear in place. There it goes. And what that does is it changes the speed to really, really slow. So watch. I didn't change the belt. All I did is lift up the back gear. You can see it's turning. I got the belt in the same position, but I'm running off the back gear and I'm block this system fix. So it's turning this is for threading. So, and I had to rebuild the tooth on that. If you look at one of the earlier videos, you'll see where I welded, brazed on a tooth. Right, so now it's free. I gotta release this button back up so we can go back in normal operation. Come on. Kind of hard one-handed.
Put the camera down on the saddle.
Yeah, here, hold this piece. There it goes. So I locked it back in position. You can see now the pulley and the chuck is together. All right, so does it work? That's what we're going to do now. I'm going to grab a piece of metal. Let me grab my tools and stuff from over here. And that tray that's on the bottom there, I actually found that tray over at the scrap yard. It's a metal surplus. I go over there and buy a lot of scrapped out stuff. I bought 2 of those. I'm going to try to weld them together and put a tray underneath here to catch the chips. But right now that one's going to work for what I want to do.
And did you talk about the other tray that's installed for that little
No,
tray?
we don't do that.
Okay.
There's a tray over here. She's talking about there's a metal tray over here.
I just like that tray.
She really likes that tray. Anyways, that is for stuff like that. Because there's no workspace here.
Yeah.
And one thing I will be doing, I'll be making a piece that sits on here. So when you take this chuck off, it's fairly heavy, and you unscrews. When you get to the end of it, it can surprise you, and that's what happens. It drops. So you're supposed to put a board in here, but I've got some decking, synthetic decking material that I'm going to put one here. And that way, if it drops, it hits that and doesn't hit this. You can see the chuck's been banged up a few times also. All right, so once you get your center drill in there and you cut that hole, then you, once again, back this out, push it off with the end of the thing, and then you bring this back out here because I got this longer bolt in there. And that locks this in place. And then you take and loosen this up and slide her down. I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a mark on it so you can see how it rotates. This is called a Lathe center. I made a mark on there so you can see how it operates. So when this is rotating now, see that? It's spinning. That end is spinning. And you can tighten that up a little bit over here. And then lock this. And it keeps this piece of metal. So if I had a longer piece of metal in here, it would hold it centered. Because when you're pushing this in against it, it wants to push out. Well.
And I can see that mark you made.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see if I can point at it. And there we go. There it is.
Yeah, it turns. So that's that.
I don't know if that makes sense.
But for this close in work, you don't need that unless you had a really tiny part. Then you probably want a center. So I'm going to move it back. And you can see the Waze oil makes it really easy to slide this back.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll leave that in there. All right, so I'll show you also the other feed that can happen, and that's right here. I'm going to move this in a little bit. And I'm not going to cut because I don't have it in the right place, but we're going to show you this. It'll show it on here. This is all stuff you learn as you go along. Because you got to disconnect this to turn this. That's part of lathe turning as you call it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this, and I'm going to turn this. So this handle, this is the cross feed right here. Run this in the mic, so I can finish the end of that. Keep the tool if I want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up, and then I'm going to turn this in. Oops, wrong one. There we go. So it's turning, it's moving right now. And we're actually moving out. Let me get something on this so you can see it. So, can you see that? Maybe I can do it here.
Yeah.
Also, watch up here. So I'm going to engage it. You should see that tool moving towards me. It's going really slow.
Very slow.
Yeah, so that would be feeding if I have the tool in here, across this way, cutting on the end. It will actually cut the end. This tool is in the wrong position to cutting the end of
And
it.
I can see it right here. But
Yeah, you have to.
it's so slow, you have to be really watching.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
So just engage that. And I can roll this all the way back down. And you can see the feed screw still going. And I can reverse that here, but you have to start it off. If I wanted to, so let's say I wanted that to feed in instead of out, I would change this lever. And that would make this still go in the same direction. We'll show it. So this is still going the same direction here.
Yeah.
And if I turn this in, the handle's going the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah.
So now, if I put this up against here,
It's moving away.
can you see the gas still growing?
Yes. Okay.
And what I did is I reversed the direction of this.
Yeah.
This is still run same, but changing this changes the feed screw
Direction of
direction.
that. I see, and then that handle is the other way too.
Automatic feed.
All right. And I see little places that say oil.
It's not.
It's there. Yeah, and I'm trying to do it from here.
You're trying to look through the lens.
Okay, so
over
here's
here.
that.
Down here's another one. Here's another one. Anywhere these little taps are at, and then underneath here, let me.
Oh, there's one right here.
Yep, there's one there too. There's these.
Okay.
You have to put oil in there, and there's just lots of little oiling spots. There's
And
one down
one
here,
right here.
and one on here, and one on here.
Yep.
Those are places that need oil, some more than often than others.
Yeah.
Any of the spindle ones really need to be oiled every use. And up here, there's an oiling spot, but there's a reservoir in here. So you don't have to, you just need to maintain the reservoir. And
Where's that at? Oh, it's in there.
This upper spindle. And there's an oil one up here for the chain. Drop a couple drops of oil down there on the chain.
Yep.
Keep it oiled. And you can over oil, but you can also under oil. So
Yeah.
it's better to over oil than under oil. The biggest thing is keeping the machine clean. So when I get all done here with my machining operation, I'm going to come in here and I'll clean up all the filings. And that's about it. So it's a completed operational lathe now.
Yeah.
And it's going to do everything I want. I'm not a master machinist. I'm a hobbyist. And this is a great size lathe for hobbyists. Because I've got all these motors I'm going to be working on and just a lot of other little projects. And just to do this, a lot of people would like to have a lathe. I've talked to a lot of people and they say, wow, that's great just to have. I'd love to have one of those. Now, they do make tabletop ones. This has legs on it, which is kind of nice because this is pretty stout. It don't move around very easily. the legs keep it more steady. You can actually anchor it to the floor you want. The idea is not to twist the bed. And it's pretty hard to do that, but it can still be done.
And I noticed that you bought a lathe that the legs have the letter A.
Yeah, if that's important, that would be. Some people think that the letter A is important.
Okay, over here, you were talking to me yesterday about the parts you're going to make for this. There was something on this.
Well, on these older motors, there's moving parts.
Is this a motor or an engine?
This is an engine. This is a hit and miss engine. About a 1923, I think it was.
Okay.
The economy engine. Anyways, these little pivoting parts, these things are old.
Yeah.
And so, I got my thing in the way. You got a lot of moving parts here that wear, and all this moving stuff. I've got some engines that this little governor parts they have worn out. So I'm gonna have to make some bushings to go into these parts.
Yeah.
To make these tight again.
And then this is a little Leroy over here.
Yeah, that's not a hit and miss. That is a 2-cylinder or single cylinder. I can't remember. But anyways, this is got a water jacket and a fuel tank, and then it's got a hand crank to start this thing.
Oh, really?
It's got a carburetor. Yep, it's more like a newer engine, only it's big. And then down there's a little Maytag.
Yeah, that's a little Maytag.
Behind here, there's engines, and
in the other garage.
And in the other garage. And then I've got one over there too.
We take those to Florida to the Florida Flywheelers antique engine show. Every February. And we may be going in November. We'll see.
And they also have, so if you do go to the Florida Flywheeler show, go into the machine shop. There is a machine shop down there. And you can see where this evolved from. Because they have a machine down there that runs off an old hit and miss engine, a 5-horse Fairbanks Morse, I think it was. And it's got a big, wide pulley belt on it. It goes up to a pulley on the ceiling, and you engage that, and it starts this long shaft turning with all these pulleys on it and all this machinery hooked up to it. And you go down to each whatever machine you want to use, the drill press or whatever, and you pull a lever, and it engages on that motor or that pulley. So it'd be like this right here. It would be another pulley over in this engine, or even coming right down to here. But anyways, it engages this, squeezes on this, and it starts turning the lathe.
Yeah.
So they came from driving with an electric motor, with the one motor, a gas-powered motor, turning these, and then eventually they went to electric.
Okay.
And I've got an old windmill, a pump that was used for pumping water with gasoline, and it replaced the windmill. And eventually, it's called a monitor pump. And eventually, they took the motor, or the top of the motor off, the water jacket, and mounted an electric motor on top of that, and replaced that motor, and ran that with electricity. But you got to remember, in the early 20s, a lot of farms had no power.
Yeah. So
that's what these old motors were used for. They're called stationary engines, or that's the main thing. But a lot of them were hit and miss, and then eventually they went to magnetos. There's a lot of history there, but it's really interesting. But you can see the progression as farms started getting power. And that's what that's all about. And the lathe followed that. So that's why this is on top. Later on, they took this whole assembly and put it down underneath. All this belt assembly went down underneath it here because it had electricity.
Oh, okay. So then, at the Florida Flywheelers, there's one building. How long is that building that has one engine in it?
Oh, there is.
That's huge.
It's called the snow engine.
Yeah.
And that engine is probably 30 or 40 feet long.
Yeah.
And it was used to pump natural gas out of the ground.
Okay.
And move it. So, but it's really interesting to watch. You can find that on YouTube. It's called the snow engine.
Okay.
At Florida Flywheelers.
And then who did you meet we watch him on YouTube, Tubal Cain.
Yeah. I met
Mr.
Tuba
Pete.
Cain, and I also E-Brown. They were down they had a meet and greet down there at the machine shop. And that was like 2 years, maybe 3 years ago now, that I met those guys down there. And they're really good. And that's where I learned a lot of this about.
Yeah.
And Tuba Cain, Pete.
Yeah, Mr. Pete.
Mr.
I think,
Pete.
yeah, we watch his
He's an older
YouTube
guy.
channel.
He was a school teacher, shop teacher.
Yeah.
And taught people how to run the machines.
Yeah.
And that's really where I learned, not from him, but from a shop teacher when I was in high school. And I always wanted to do this and never had the machine. And now that I'm retired, I have a machine that I can do what I wanted to do back
And
then.
you took some college classes too here at
Yeah,
Tech?
I took some college classes, but I never really took a full machine course,
Okay.
that's what I'm doing right now.
All right.
I'm learning how to run a machine. So I don't always do things right, but I know what it's supposed to do, and I'll get there. And there's a lot of places I can learn.
Yeah.
And so behind here, I've also got a milling machine. They wanted us to cover this up mainly to show this so you could see it in its completed state without a lot of debris around it. So we keep saying we need to sell the house and buy a garage with a house attached.
Yes.
Because that's really what I need. This is a small garage.
Yeah.
And it does everything. I got another garage attached on the house, but this is my shop.
Where your other small lathe is.
Yeah. Well, I got a small lathe over there.
Yeah.
But this is really nice. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad I rescued it.
Yeah.
The young man that was selling it was his dad's. And it sat in the shed for a long time. And it was covered with dirt. I was a little bit concerned about it. But everything moved, so I said, well, it's fixable. And I got it and we fixed it. And I'm going to send him some pictures of this completed because he asked me to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
But
Just send him your PZ the Fix-It Man channel where you restored this lathe. That's great. We'll have more things coming that you're going to be fixing. We have something in the works coming.
got a couple things.
Yep, a couple things. And so stay tuned and subscribe and hit like and give us a thumbs up. Thanks for
Thank you.
watching.